super excited to bring on board Honorable Justice Pratibha Singh, who has very kindly agreed to grace us and wish us, and Dr. Virendra Tulsapurkar. As you all know, Justice Singh is an honorable judge, sitting judge of Delhi High Court. She had been an active practitioner and passionate IP activist, as I know, and she has heard landmark judgments on IP law. Ma'am, we wish you to and address all of us on this and remark little bit on this topic, that is the conundrum of copyright in cinematographic work. Over to Justice Pratibha Singh.
Okay. Yes. A very good evening to all of you. Mahua, thank you for having me on this webinar. Dr. Tulsapurkar, a very good evening. It's my pleasure to share the dais with you today on this webinar. First of all, I would like to say my warmest greetings to all of you on World IP Day. This is an unusual year for us to be celebrating, and the manner in which we are celebrating the World IP Day, because I don't think since the 20 years since IP Day has been installed by the WIPO, such a day has ever come when we've had no event, no physical interaction, and no conference, no seminar, no World IP Awards as it is happening this year. And if you all see the WIPO's website for today, the theme of World IP Day today, this time, is Innovate for a Green Future. And I think that this subject which the WIPO decided for this year's theme is quite astrological prediction, if I may just say, because the environment is what has caused this, and they came about this topic, I'm sure, even before COVID-19 hit all of us in a predictive manner. So the theme of World IP Day, Innovate for a Green Future, has actually brought back into focus the environment of the world, and it has shown us as to how innovations going forward would have to take care of the environment and the ecology. And the environment is what makes man who he is, as man is a social animal, but without the social life that man enjoys, I don't think IP can even sustain. And I think IP has a very big role to play, because innovation and profits have to be in a responsible manner, and the ecology and the environment needs to be safeguarded while we are discussing World IP Day today. As you will all realize that, patents can promote more green technology, designs can have more eco-friendly products, geographical indications can be more for sustaining the environment and the community welfare rather than for commercialization. Plant varieties ought to be more towards use of less pesticides, less insecticides, etc., rather than to, create more and more profiteering. IP has to become responsible. And that brings us to the topic for the day, and that is copyright in cinematograph films. I wasn't supposed to speak on the topic itself. I'm sure I will enjoy listening to Dr. Tulsapurkar on this. But I can only say that, India has come a long way in protecting copyright. And I think there has been a synergy of laws and the industry and practitioners together, who have launched this massive campaign in the last decade or so to ensure that copyright and rights in music, rights in movies, online platforms, etc., can be better protected. Judicial remedies have been supportive of the rights of the creator and right of the author. The digital world, the online platform, posed very big challenges to the copyright and creative industry. I can only say that, unlike in other fields of technology and IP, where India is always the target of IP violation, in the area of copyright, I really think that India is the victim. Because India is the largest producer of creative works in the world itself. We produce more creative works, more music, more copyrighted films, more documentaries, more films in regional languages than even Bollywood, than even Hollywood. And I think the creative industry being so big, even if you take, for example, news channels, almost all the creative works from India are pirated across the world, especially through online platforms. And I think India needs to raise its voice on copyright infringement, not just within India, but at a global scale. And copyright in cinematograph films is a very big problem that India faces. Judges have from time to time innovated various remedies, and I'm sure the rogue website orders which have been passed by various high courts in the country have helped in ensuring that online piracy in the first 1 week or 2-3 days after the film is released is curbed to an extent. I don't know what is the success of that. I'm sure people in the industry would be able to tell us. Technology poses a challenge to law, and the Copyright Act is a very forward-looking act. All forms of illegal dissemination is curbed under the Copyright Act. I think the amendments in the cinematographic film, which some states have introduced, including Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu, are I'm not sure if they've been judicially tested, but camcording, etc., can definitely be criminal offenses, and I think India is taking the right steps in curbing copyright infringement. With these opening comments, I would hand over the stage to Dr. Tulsapurkar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your valuable words that remind us how big our movie industry is. And even during this lockdown period, we are sustaining somehow on our consumption of Netflix and other channels, and that keeps us alive. In the end of the day, we look forward when to wrap up the work and when will I go back to my channel. So yes, this is an important industry. So coming back to Dr. Virendra Tulsapurkar, he needs no introduction to the IP community of India. Such is his love for intellectual property law that in the midst of a busy practice, which best of the lawyers would envy, even I also sometimes think, let me wrap up everything and go back to studies. He found time to research and earn a doctorate in intellectual property law from the University of Mumbai. With or without a doctorate degree, he is a giant among intellectual property lawyers. He has argued leading cases in intellectual property matters, both in the old regime and in the new regime. The number of landmark cases argued by him are too numerous to list out here. And the idea for me to engage him today is he calls himself technically challenged. So I wanted to prove otherwise, that he is not technologically challenged, and these are very easy way to navigate once we have a hang of it. And so this forum has more than 500 participants today, having a wide spectrum of people from legal fraternity, including students. So I may reassert the basics as we go along. Those who are the experts in this field, please bear with me. You may please start asking your questions in the question and answer box below as we go along. We may not be able to accommodate all the questions, thus request you all to ask questions only relevant to today's discussion. We may try to revert back to you by email if we find such things. So today's topic is the conundrum of copyright in cinematographic work. But on the eve of World IP Day, I thought deviating a little bit before we jump on the topic. After all, we are having a lot of webinars with substantive topics. So Dr. Tulsapurkar has some interesting story to narrate to us, we youngsters. I would like to call myself a youngster, relating to development of IP bar in India. So over to Dr. Virendra Tuljapurkar. So unmute yourself.
Honorable Ms. Justice Pratibha Singh, Mahua and friends, I am grateful for giving an opportunity to me to present my views on a topic on which there are two diametrically opposite views. But before I begin my speech on the eve of the World Intellectual Property Day, I would like to pay my homage to the three members of the Bombay IP Bar. The first and the foremost is the late Mr. K.S. Shavaksha, who was the first registrar of trademarks in India. It was because of his tireless efforts that the trademark registry came to be located in Mumbai. His efforts contributed to the registry's development not only in the administrative office, but as an important source of legal principles formulated in the decisions of the registry in opposition and rectification proceedings. This was sometime in 1940s and 1950s. It was Mr. Shavaksha who inter alia brought out the distinction between a trademark being distinctive in law and also in fact to get the status of a registered trademark. He gave the illustration of the word best, B-E-S-T, which in law could never be considered to be a distinctive or capable of becoming distinctive mark to be registered as a trademark. The adjective best could never acquire distinctiveness in law. But Mr. Shavaksha explained that de facto it could acquire distinctiveness by extensive use in relation to a particular activity. He gave the example of the Municipal Corporation of Bombay and said it could maintain a passing of action if someone started a transport business under the trademark BEST. The word best had acquired distinctiveness in fact, and that could be protected under common law. Apart from being a distinguished IP jurist, he was a thorough gentleman with varied interests. His hobby was to brew wine, and his bungalow at Marine Lines, he used to offer home-brewed wine to his juniors at the end of the conferences.
So, sir, what is your hobby? We would all like to know, stepping a little bit away from the substantive law. I'm sure there is something behind the scene as well.
My hobby is to make frolic greeting cards, which are person-specific or occasion-specific.
So we will share some of his creative work as well. In the end, stay with us. We will show some of his cards, how he, cuts papers from cartoons and make personalized cards.
That is the only cut and paste technique I have experienced. Okay. Anyway, coming back to the topic, one of the main recipients of Mr. Shavaksha's wine, wisdom and knowledge was Mr. J.I. Mehta, on whom the mantle fell after Mr. Shavaksha's death in 1972 or so. Mr. Mehta was a senior advocate, was a voracious reader with analytical mind and vast knowledge, not only of the IP law, but admiralty law, insurance law, commercial law, corporate law, etc. He started practice in the year 1950. It was in 1950 and 60s that the constitutional law developed in this country. But Mr. Mehta was so busy with the IP practice and with his love for IP practice, he could not spare time for the development of the constitutional law. But what was loss of the constitutional law bar was the gain of the IP law bar. His immense contribution in the IP law development is immeasurable. His arguments that the registrar's discretion not to register a trademark overrides all other favorable considerations was accepted by Justice Modi in a case decided in 1970.
Sir, as we are going on a historical route, the youngsters would like to know, when did you start your practice?
Oh, I started my practice in 1968 and joined Mr. J.I. Mehta. By that time, Mr. Shavaksha was at the bar practicing on the original side of the Bombay High Court. The third luminary of the IP bar who contributed to the development of the IP law is Professor T.N. Daruwala. Temtan, as he was fondly called, was an intelligent student of the IP law in the beginning who took training from Mr. Shavaksha and also from Mr. J.I. Mehta. Though Mr. Daruwala was a solicitor supposed to be doing table work of preparing cases, he preferred to don advocate's gown and argue his cases himself instead of instructing another counsel. The IP law was his passion. He appeared in many cases before the trademark registry, before district courts, before high courts, as well as the Supreme Court. And his participation in the national and international seminar on complicated subjects of IP law, it was no wonder that he was called to give evidence before the Select Committee of the Parliament, which was constituted to consider replacement of 1958 Trademarks Act. He did not mince words when a member of the Parliamentary Select Committee insisted that Mr. Daruwala would suggest some measure, some provisions in the Trademarks Act so that the foreign trademarks in India could be banned. Temtan, in his clear words, addressed the committee about pitfalls of some of the proposed amendments, like constituting the appellate board, that too to be manned by the registry personnel, though to be headed by a retired High Court judge. To the members who preferred that the foreign brands should be banned, Mr. Daruwala, in strong words, laced with stronger Punjabi tadka, told that the Trademark Act cannot be discriminatory. And if a political aim is to be achieved, it can be achieved through the other laws, such as Industries Development Act and policies like foreign direct investment policy. Mr. Daruwala had a flair for language, and having spent his childhood in Punjab, had picked up spicy phrases from that language, the use of which always made his argument spicy and attractive. He was a lover of music and used to take part in choir singing. But the IP law was his passion, which he pursued till the last breath. All of them are no more. Let their souls rest in peace.
Wow. That was an interesting story to hear from you, especially about the history of the best buzz of the trademark and Mr. Daruwala's Punjabi Tadka. These are rare anecdotes. So coming back to today's topic, the conundrum of copyright in cinematographic work. We choose this topic as we do not have a clear path in understanding. It's a gray area for us. As idea per se is not a subject matter of protection, we see a gap in determining the fate of any case related to cinematography. We all know that copyright is a bundle of rights and there are several copyrights in one single movie. How do we analyze whether a producer can claim copyright in a similar prior movie, or a writer can claim copyright infringement of his script or the central plot being used in a movie? Most of the time we receive such queries, and unfortunately 90% of the cases cannot be boxed as a copyright infringement. So what does our court say?
First, I would like to clarify that there is conundrum suggested by Ms. Maua in the matter of infringement of copyright in a cinematograph film. Conundrum means riddle or a puzzle. There is no puzzle, there is no riddle. There are diametrically opposite views as to whether another film which is reshot and a copy of the original film amounts to infringement. I would go to the extent of calling one of the views as resulting in dilution rights of the owner of the copyright in the first cinematograph film. It goes further to deprive the owner of the copyright in the first film, that is, the author who is the producer of the film, of all copyrights in the film as a separate copyrightable work. He is left with the protection which he can claim in the underlying works, namely the literary work and the musical work. But he cannot claim copyright in the cinematograph film itself. This is the first view. This will become clear when we discuss the two cases, laying down directly contrary principles. The first view is of the Bombay High Court in a case in which it was held that in order to constitute infringement of a copyright in a cinematograph film, the second film must be an exact physical copy of the first film. The Bombay High Court noted that the reshooting of the first film with exact same dialogues, cast, costumes, songs will not amount to infringement of the original film. The second view is of the Delhi High Court, which took the view that a similar film with similar dialogues or similar work or even similar other attributes like background music, costumes, would render the second film a copy of the first film and will amount to an infringement of cinematograph film. The Delhi High Court laid emphasis on the fact that the cinematograph film is not merely addition of underlying work together, namely literary and musical work. Implies the fact that the Copyright Act recognizes a cinematograph film as an independent copyrightable work, though it is a result of the combination of underlying works. Till this conflict is resolved, and I repeat that there is no conundrum involved in it, but two divergent legal views, and till it is resolved by the Supreme Court, the confusion will continue. The first case is in respect of Maharashtra, of governing Maharashtra. Therefore, a film which is a reshoot of the first film will not amount to infringement in Maharashtra, whereas in Delhi it will be regarded as an infringement. It is this problem that is discussed hereinafter. Let us consider certain provisions of Copyright Act 1957 to appreciate the problem. Under the Copyright Act,
If you can
copyright divided into three categories.
little bit slow.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Under the Copyright Act, copyrightable works are divided in three categories. Category 1, a literary, dramatic, musical, or artistic work. 2, a cinematograph film. And 3, a sound recording. A cinematograph film under section 2F of the Act means any work of visual recording and includes sound recording accompanying such visual recording. Under section 13, it is mentioned that the artistic work must be original. As far as the cinematograph film is concerned, the cinematograph film consists of original work, namely the literary work and the musical work. Section 14 states what copyright means in respect of each of the aforesaid types of work. Obviously, it includes the cinematograph film, and it provides that in respect of a cinematograph film, copyright means exclusive right: A, to make a copy of the film; B, to hire or later hire the cinematograph film; and C, to communicate the film to it is first category, that is to make a copy of the film, is the subject matter of controversy. Section 51 of the Act provides that if any of this is done, which is described in section 14, in the instant case to make a copy of the cinematograph film by any person without the consent of the copyright, such person shall be committing an act of infringement. So in the instant case, we are concerned with infringement of copyright by reason of another film being made by another person without the consent of the owner of the first cinematograph film. Now, to appreciate the controversy, it is necessary to understand what a cinematograph film means and conveys. The cinematograph film consists of a story, dialogue, that is the literary work, and the songs, that is the musical work. The musical work consists both literary and musical work. When a musical composition is married to lyrics, song comes into existence. So a cinematograph film consists of underlying works, namely literary work and musical work. However, cinematograph film is not only literary and musical, and there are other things which are added, such as directorial input, manner in which the dialogues are to be spoken, the dramatic works, the costumes, the characters, the selection of location where shooting is done, and the actual filming and recording. But last but not the least, the editing that is required to be done to make the film a success. Thus, all the aforesaid taken together will result in a film coming into existence.
Yeah. So there is a question which has come up, that what about the rights of other owners of other bundle of works, like the musical or literary works? Do they have claim whenever the movie is exhibited each time?
I will answer that question after referring to a decision of the Supreme Court, which was given in 1977 in the case of Indian Performing Rights Society versus Indian Motion Pictures Association and others. It was in the context of a claim made by Indian Performing Rights Society on behalf of the authors of literary work and musical composers that every time a cinematograph film is exhibited in a cinema hall, they are entitled to compensation or royalty. The claim was negatived by the Supreme Court on the ground that once a cinematograph film is made, incorporating the literary work, the musical work, and other elements, a separate and independent copyrightable work comes into existence. And then there is no question of the authors of the underlying work claiming any separate copyright in respect of the cinematograph film which will be exhibited in the theater. There is no question of their claiming any royalty or compensation every time the cinematograph is communicated to the public. In considering that question, the Supreme Court was required to analyze what the cinematograph film consists of. And for that purpose, you can make a reference to paragraph 20 of the judgment, which will bring home the point. It is clear that a cinematograph film is not merely a mixture of literary work and musical work. There are many other elements which are so arranged in combination with the literary, dramatic, and musical work so as to produce a cinematograph film. All that is done by the skill and labor of the author of the cinematograph film, namely the producer. A question that arises is the similar film, which is not the original film, amounts to an infringement, or is it a copy? Now, the Cambridge Dictionary, the word copy is described as to produce something so that it is the same as an original piece. Same as an original piece. Words. Lexico also says as a noun, a thing made to be similar or identical to another. The Bombay High Court took the aforesaid view in the case of Star India Private Limited versus Leo Burnett, reported in the 2003 PTC, etc. The Bombay High Court took the narrowest view of the word copy, a physical copy of the original film. As a result of this view, even if the original film was reshot with the identical dialogues, identical songs, identical versions, identical sequences, identical costumes, and editing, the second film will not amount to an infringing copy. It may amount, just note, it may amount to an infringement of the underlying works. Namely, the second film will be considered as an infringement story or infringement of the musical work, that is the songs. This was the narrow view taken by the Bombay High Court. Even this view resulting in, one, not recognizing cinematograph film as an independent copyright, two, giving importance to the underlying works. But I am of the humble opinion that this view goes to the extent of diluting the rights of the owner of the copyright in a cinematograph film. The Bombay High Court came to this conclusion of interpretation of the Copyright Act as also relying on the earlier English judgments, one of which was later on overruled, and which fact was not noticed by the Bombay High Court. The exactly opposite view was taken by Delhi High Court in the case of MRF Limited versus Metro Tyres Limited. The Delhi High Court also referred to the later decision of the Bombay High Court in the case of Entertainment Enterprises, Zee Entertainment versus Gajendra Singh. In the Zee Entertainment case, learned single judge, being bound by the earlier view, however, commented that the arguments advanced in the case by the plaintiff, which were taken by in the earlier case of the Bombay High Court, were worth considering. However, he found himself bound by the earlier decision. The Delhi High Court also considered the provisions of the Berne Convention, which recognized the cinematograph film as an independent copyrightable work. It also referred to another decision of Calcutta High Court, in which also the view contrary to the Bombay High Court was taken. These are the two conflicting views, and the issue is required to be resolved by the Supreme Court. Till the issue is resolved by the Supreme Court, the conflict will continue.
So, sir, according to you, which judgment you prefer? What is originality in cinematographic film according to you?
I prefer the Delhi judgment because it gives the right place to cinematograph film as a copyrightable work, complete copyrightable work. And the producer is not required to rely on the underlying works for the purpose of stopping infringement of the cinematograph film. Now take a case where an author has given permission to the first producer of the film to incorporate his work in the cinematograph film. Now a second film is made using the same story and same dialogue. And if the author does not make any claim, the producer of the first cinematograph film will not be able to make any claim of infringement. This is the difficulty. This is what I call a dilution of the cinematograph film as an independent copyrightable work.
Ma'am, would you like to say something or comment something on this? This is an interesting position of Bombay High Court and Delhi High Court. So that's why sometimes we see a jurisdiction shopping of movie being released, they rush to the Delhi High Court. Yeah. Would you like to say something on this?
I'm not sure if I should comment on the merits of this argument.
No.
I can only bring one or two facts to the notice of the viewers and Dr. Tulsipurkar. There is one judgment of the Bombay High Court, Zee Telefilms versus Sundial Communications, where again, I think what you said was right. It was the copyright in the underlying work which was upheld, and hence copyright infringement was held. So I'm not sure about any other judgment of the Bombay High Court or of the Supreme Court, but I know that the Sundial communication case was upheld by the Supreme Court. It went to the Supreme Court. It was a division bench of Bombay High Court, Justice Shah and Justice Deshmukh's judgment. And that was carried to the Supreme Court. I recall because I was appearing in that matter in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court had upheld the division bench of Bombay High Court. But again, as I said, it's copyright in the underlying work, not in the cinema.
Not.
Yeah. The division bench did not go into the question whether a cinematograph film is infringed.
Yes. So section 14 is what I would, as Dr. Tulsipurkar has pointed out, the rights, the exclusive rights which have been vested in a cinematograph film and a sound recording are not the same as in respect of original works. And that is actually what has caused this difference. But I think the overwhelming view recently appears to be in favor of the Calcutta High Court and the Delhi High Court, where you see large number of ex parte orders being granted, etc. But yes, as Dr. Tulsipurkar is saying, there is no clear judgment of the Supreme Court on this issue.
Okay. So, coming back to a query which has come, that what is your opinion on prequel and sequel?
Oh.
Yeah.
The word prequel or sequel you will not find in any copyright law. You have a story. Now, a prequel means a story prior to that story, and sequel means story subsequent to that story. Now, the owner of the copyright in the story or in the cinematograph film can certainly make a claim to be the owner of the copyright in the prequel as well as sequel.
So there's another question. We have jumped onto question and we are trying to now take up the questions. There is one question which may, it may take some time for you to think about it. What was your most difficult copyright case? Can you recall? I know it's since 1940 you are practicing.
By and large, all cases are difficult. But the most difficult case was in respect of the dispute between the copyright owner of a cinematograph film and the copyright owner of the underlying works.
Now the second question is, sir, on section 17, that the proviso under section 17. Yeah.
Just a minute.
People are making him open the bare act. Huh? That is not fair. The
Yes.
proviso under section 17, does it take away the concept of commissioned work or work made for hire?
No, it doesn't take the.
Or is the proviso mainly to protect the moral rights and royalties of authors?
That's right.
Okay. So he confirms. Yeah. We answered this. There's a question is, I would like to know if the reshoot of the same movie be considered a separate work or not, if we take into account the Delhi High Court judgment.
Delhi High Court judgment considered it will be an infringement of the original films, and there can't be any copyright in any infringed copy. It will not be considered as a separate film. It will be considered as a copy of the original film according to Delhi High Court.
Okay. Now somebody is asking that I have acquired copyright of movie under the assignment deed for perpetual. If the 60 years are over from the date of production, does that movie goes into public domain?
Not from the date of production, the date on which first it was published.
Yeah. Okay. Second question, the Copyright Act does not mention about the director of a cinematograph film. Are there any rights associated with the director of a film?
Yeah, as the director is covered by the rights which are conferred on, say, lawyers. They are performing rights. That may be covered, but the director doesn't get any copyright. In fact, there was a tussle between the directors and the producers of the film when the parliament was considering amending the 1957 Act.
The second question is, if film converts in other language, is it amount to infringement?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, it's a separate bundle of work. That's another literary work as you are transgressing from one language to the language. Copyright again asserts that even if a movie is made, there are several copyrights from a book converted to a script converted to be maybe a playwright may be converted from the screenwriter, and then in cinematography, the choreography of the dance, when it is transferred into a tangible medium, and the music, the compositions, the literary work of the music. So there are several bundle of rights in one single work. Okay. Now there is one question. It's bit lengthy question. Bear with me. How do you observe the question of moral rights of authors' work? Are moral rights of authors are merely restricted to claiming credit or damages if an artistic cinematographic work is damages or distorted with? It's about moral right.
Moral rights consist of two types. One is the right to paternity, that is to claim ownership of the copyright in that work. And second is a negative right in the sense to prevent any distortion or mutilation of the film so as to damage the honor and reputation of the author. But that is not a copyright. It's an additional right granted by the copyright law.
Now, somebody asked, how should we differentiate between idea and expression?
Idea is merely an idea. There is no copyright in an idea. Yeah. Expression means how that idea is developed step by step, sequences, etc.
Yeah. How do we ascertain damages in case of infringement of copyright in cinematograph film as far as right of individual contributors like actors, editors are concerned?
No, the claim or damages will be made only by the producer himself. What profit he would have made had the infringing film had not been made.
So this is a general question. Advise young law students or junior advocates to pursue IP as a line of practice.
Oh yes, certainly.
And what about developing a hobby?
Developing a hobby depends. I think everyone should have some hobby or the other.
Okay,
It gives a relief.
that's right.
Now, I must thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on the eve of the International World Copyright Day. Thank you.
So thank you all. Thank you, ma'am, from joining us. Advocates to